Red means no rules. What a better way to kick off the new year than to talk about pubes? And I don't know if pubes is a cuss word. I'm not sure if it's inappropriate. I think it is. But I want you to take a deep breath and understand that I'm not trying to be vulgar, that this is something everyone goes through in some capacity, I think. I am not an anomaly here, but I think the story is interesting. And I think the story sheds a larger light on the societal implications of our pubic regions. I don't know I'll let you guys come to the conclusion. But this video is going to be about the first time I shaved my pubes. Why I did it, where I did it, how I did it, all of it. We're gonna bear it all. So I'm excited because on a video for my other channel, my Green Means Go sports channel, right? Like I am much more calculated. I am much more analytical. And I just get to sit back and talk about pubes. And I mean, that's a blessing in some ways. So why this video? Why now? The thing is, I don't know. I was laying in bed last night and I had this like core memory just flash, no pun intended, in my brain. And I was like, wait a minute. That's kind of weird. Like the way that unfolded at that point in time in my life, which I will talk about, like that, is that normal? Could I tell the world about that and then have them weigh in on if it's normal? Is this normal pubic behavior? I do my best thinking, I think, right before bed, and then I get worked up and then I can't sleep because I'm like, tomorrow I'm going to make a video about the first time I shaved in the underwear zone. I don't remember when I developed my first pubic hair. I'm sure that some boys, eventually young men, know the day that they felt their first sprout. Not I. But I would imagine it was 7th, 8th grade. And in 7th and 8th grade, I did sports. I did cross country, I did swimming, and I did track. And boys in middle school are very particular about changing. At least they were when I was in school. Like they're still kind of ashamed of their bodies, and even in high school. But high school, the stigma changes. Okay, we'll get to that. But in middle school, it's like boys in gym, like boys' fear is to be seen by another boy naked. Now, I don't know if it is like a homosexuality sort of stigma. I don't think that's what it is. Like, of course, like that would be like a thing. Like, oh, you're looking at him. He's naked. He's gay. Like, especially in the mid 2000s, like that was a thing. But I think it's deeper than that. And I think it's just about like kind of being ashamed of being nude or like being insulted for like your parts. Like, that's not what this video is about. The point is, in middle school, middle schoolers are more cognizant of how much of their region they're showing, and they try to show very little. Pantsing was a big deal when I was in school. If you don't know what pantsing is, it's the act of walking up to an unsuspecting citizen and literally pulling their pants down. It's not good. I wouldn't recommend ever doing it to anyone. In fact, why were we doing that to each other? Totally uncalled for. I had a friend who got pantsed, underwear and all, at cross-country practice. And there were girls on the team, and the girls saw him fully saw him. And he got made fun of for that, right? And that's so mean that an innocent bystander of pantsing would get made fun of. Even though I swam, it was very much, you pull your jammer down. We weren't doing Speedos in middle school. You pull your jammer down, you'd have the towel over you, and you'd get dressed. You wouldn't show anybody your parts. Now, I get to 9th grade. I get to high school. And let's just put all the transition on the back burner. Like, that's a huge piece. Like, freshmen coming in, culturally, that's a big deal. Freshmen want to fit in. They get hazed. They get picked on, initiated, if you will. And I started cross country my freshman year. Now, this is a summer and fall sport. I was just out of 8th grade. Like, I hadn't even had a day of high school, and I was already practicing with the cross country team. And I was intimidated. incredibly intimidated to see, like, these are grown men. Like, there are 18-year-olds on the team. I'm what, 12? I don't know how old I was. How old was I in eighth grade? 14, 13, 14, 15? I was young. I felt like a kid, and I felt like I was around a bunch of grown men. I didn't love running. I wasn't like passionate about running. My friends ran, so I ran. I ran. We had summer practices, and it was fine. We'd go, we'd show up, we'd run, we'd go home. Now, I remember that every year the cross country team had a getaway, a camp, where they'd get on minibuses and we'd go overnight someplace. And I was terrified. I was terrified to go because, and it's not funny, but the upperclassmen would like say stuff to us. Like, this is bad. Like, as I'm processing this, okay, I realize that this is probably legally wrong. But these upperclassmen would be like, oh, you better watch yourself. You better watch yourself in the shower. You better watch yourself where you sleep tonight. Like, they would say this. And part of me was like, they're not going to do anything, right? Right? Like, they wouldn't do anything to me. But I didn't know. And yes, they were just messing around. Nothing ever truly happened. They would threaten, right? They would maybe touch you and tickle you, which is still probably out of line. But maybe they'd touch your, they pushed the line. But nothing like egregious happened, right? But I was so scared. And I remembered like finding upperclassmen who I knew wouldn't do this and like purposely trying to bunk with them so that they could protect me from these other dudes who ended up becoming my friends. Like, it was fine, but it wasn't. I was scared. We go to this overnight camp and we get actually rained out. We're supposed to be in tents and it gets rained out, it's completely swamped, and we move to this house. So now it's not about sharing a tent with somebody. Like, now we're in like an open house where somebody can come sneak up and put their fingers in my butt. Like, that's the kind of stuff they were threatening. I'm just going to say it. It's not pretty, but they were saying that stuff. They never did it. They were never going to do it. But the threat was terrifying to me. And darn heckin', I had a right to be scared. That's not right of them to do that. And that's okay for me to say. It doesn't make me weak. Anyway, what makes me weak is shaving my pubes, which we'll get to. So that trip came, it went, it was fine. Nobody was hurt. I was on edge the whole time. But overall, they weren't trying to be malicious. They were trying to tease, and they were trying to tease aggressively, and it worked. And so we go home. And the school year starts, and every Friday we have morning practice. Monday through Thursday we practice in the afternoon, but on Fridays, because meets are typically on Saturday, we don't want to practice in the afternoon on Friday, we practice in the morning. So we get up, we show up at the school at 6 o'clock, we run 3 miles, we shower. Let me say that again. We shower, and then we go to school. Well, then we go to McDonald's, then we go to school. So my first ever morning practice, it was going to be the first time that I showered with other gentlemen, because in middle school, after swimming, if we showered, we still had our swimsuits on. So it wasn't really showering. And I didn't know how it was going to go. I think I may have brought a swimsuit to cross country practice because I didn't know the vibe. Like, I wanted to be prepared. Like, if boys were going to be naked, I didn't want to wear a swimsuit, but if boys weren't going to be naked, I definitely didn't want to be naked. I don't remember exactly what led up to it. I just remember the anxiety I felt about how I was supposed to be presented in the shower with a bunch of other dudes, some 18, some 14. And we ran, and we got back, and everybody starts showering nude. Okay? And like, I wasn't bothered by that per se. Like, I think your first time showering nude with a bunch of men, you're like, oh, like, is this like, are we, I don't like, but it's fine, right? So is it natural? I'm going to say it's natural. It's natural for high school boys to do. And I think most of the time it can be fine. And if people don't want to do it, they don't have to. But if they do and they want to respect each other, then that's fine. Is kind of, I guess, my stance. I don't know if I need a stance on high school boys showering, but there it is. This part I remember vividly, is walking in to everybody And you're trying to keep your eyes up. And I remember the upperclassmen, the same ones that were teasing me on this overnight trip, like looking. The more I say this, the more I realize how messed up it was. And I'm sorry. I don't want to trigger anybody and bring up any, like, I don't want to laugh about it and make light of this because this is probably bad, but it happened. So we're going to talk about it. We're going to bring awareness to it. They were like looking at the freshmen and like commenting not on their private parts, on their pubic hair. They didn't care. Like maybe typically guys will think it's the size or the shape or the, texture of the situation that could get them made fun of. There was no comments about that whatsoever. But the bush was the topic at hand. And if you had pubic hair, they let you know, as if you didn't know. And when you looked down at them, they did not. Like nobody had pubic hair except the freshmen. Now, I watched Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, and nowhere in there, in that lovely show on Nickelodeon, where Ned taught me how to be ready for high school, did he say, you got to shave your pubes. It's just what the high schoolers do. Darn it, Ned, you could have helped me out. Because I didn't know high school boys were supposed to be shaving their pubes. No clue, not on my radar. And I remember them walking up to my friend and saying, dude, word for word, I remember this. I vividly remember this. Dude, you could hide a tiger in there. And then them all just laughing, right? And this, my friend didn't run cross country after this year. And there can be hypotheses as to why, but I think the treatment of how he was treated and how we were all treated played into that. You could hide a tiger in there. I was not expecting to get in the shower. Like, if anything, they were going to make fun of how it looked. Like, there were, like, they didn't talk about my private parts. They talked about my pubic hair. And not even that, just that it existed. And I was like, I got to do, like, I can't be the kid with pubic hair. What am I, some kind of freak? I got to figure this out. So I went home, and Friday night, I took a shower. And I had never done any shaving. I mean, it took me a long time to even get this. It was my senior year before I had just the smallest amount of facial hair, right? Like, I'm not an overall hairy guy. And I got into the shower on a Friday night, and we only had one shower in our house. I didn't own a razor. What do I need a razor for? I'm 14. My mom owned a razor. My mom shaved her legs. And I worked with what I had. So I took my mom's razor. Of course, I didn't ask what. And I did the best hack job I knew how. With the grain, against the grain, sideways, upways, downways. I had no idea what I was doing at all. And then it started like, puffs of these red was coming out, starting to bleed. It didn't hurt. I don't remember it being like, like, oh my gosh. Like, I just remember being like, okay, it doesn't really hurt, but it's bleeding, but it's small. So we'll just let it ride, clean it all up. So I shaved my bush with my mom's razor, and I cleaned up the shower. Like, I tried to hide the evidence as best I could. Probably didn't. Like, my mom's probably like, oh yeah, I know you were shaving your pubes with my razor. I found the little hairs in yeah, right? Now, it was fine for a little bit. And I had what would later be determined to be known as razor burn. I didn't know what that was. But the next day, I hurt. It hurt. All up there. It just hurt. First time shaving. Just raw. Bic razor. Your mom's Bic leg shaven razor. Right across your pubes with the grain, against the grain. No conditioner. No shaving on gel. Nothing. Just raw skinned razor. Rusty razor. 2 blades. Maybe 1 blade. Single razor blade. Pulling, yanking, tugging, cutting, bleeding, baby. I go to practice because it's early in the season. We don't have a meet on Saturday. We have practice. And I kid you not, we show up there. And the first thing these upperclassmen like do or say is like, you shave your bush? What? Is this normal? Does this happen to people? And I just remember like one by one, the freshmen were like, yep. Like out at practice, on the track, like pulling down their pants a little bit so the upperclassmen could like vet them at pubic hair shaving. And they celebrated us like we were a part of something. It was like we were in, and they were high-fiving us. It was like the most like support they had shown us all year. No longer were they worried about hazing us. It was like we followed their command. And they started noticing on each of us. That's the funniest part. None of the freshmen had ever shaved their pubic hairs, and they were noticing how razor burn they all were. And they were like, "Oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, my first time I was super razor burn." Like, did you go against the grain? Oh brother, you can't go against the grain. This is so messed up. And like, I'm not gonna lie, part of me felt validated for the first time by these guys. And it's dangerous, right? It's like a drug. No wonder people do drugs, do alcohol. People are doing alcohol in high school. Why? Because the validation that they get from somebody else, it feels good. I was somebody who throughout high school tried to stick to my moral code, my beliefs, and I did. And I think shaving my pubes for someone else was probably the worst thing I did in terms of like peer pressure. But I can see why peer pressure, why people get peer pressured. It's scary to not fit in, right? And so I'll never forget, and this will be the wrap up. One of the upperclassmen who was not really hazing, right? But who was watching, but not standing up for us, but like, you know, good guy, we'll call, like came up to me afterwards and was like, "Hey, Razorburn, if you just go put some women's unscented deodorant on it, it'll help. You know, girls shave their pits, and so it's like formulated to help soothe that. So you got a sister?" I'm like, "No." It's like, "A mom? Like, I already used her razor to shave my pubes. What's putting her deodorant on my pubes?" So I went home, took a shower, got out of the shower, and I put my mom's unscented Zest deodorant on my pubic region to help the burn. Have a good night.